Welcome to the GateDrop Podcast. GateDrop.com, giving you the jump in motocross news.
GateDrop.com, Portugal MXGP preview. I'm Jonathan McCready, and joining me is Andy McKinstry. Andy, you were in Portugal, in Agueda. How was your trip? How was the racing? What were your thoughts on Portugal for the first time? I think that's the first time you'd been there. I'd been there, maybe a decade ago now, actually, but it's a very good track to watch from. Quite out of the way in terms of traveling to, but how did you find it all?
I didn't realize you have actually been there before then. Yeah, to be honest, enjoyed every minute of it. One of those tracks where you walk into, you just think, wow, this is amazing. Everything's so handy, you know, when you're actually at the track. The paddock's close. It's brilliant for the fans. Everything's kind of condensed into a small space, so there's no hassle. So really, really good. The weather was unbelievable. The really good atmosphere there, actually. Obviously, due to COVID this last couple of years, if there've been any fans there at all, it's been limited. So it was good to see a packed house for the Sunday. A lot of Spanish there as well as Portuguese. I couldn't recommend it. If anyone hasn't been there, I thoroughly recommend you go there for an MXGP. Really, really good.
Did you get your head burnt? I know you don't really like the sun, and the few times you've managed to fly back with a burnt head.
Do you know what? It was hot, but it wasn't like unbelievably hot. So put my suntan cream on, and not too bad. Wee bit on the head that I missed on the back of my legs, but apart from that, can't complain.
On the airport, how did that go?
Yeah, that was probably the biggest shambles of the whole weekend, all thanks to Dublin. Dublin had recommended for everyone to get down to their flight 4 hours early because they have staff difficulties. Went there, got through security in 15 minutes, but then Burger King was a shambles. Took me an hour and a half to get a burger. And then coming home, the flight was delayed. I ran to make the bus. I made the bus, but the bus was full, so I had to wait an hour to get home. But you know what? It was all worth it in the end because the racing was brilliant, the track was brilliant, the crowd was brilliant, and I can't wait for the next one now.
Missing your bus is why this podcast is a day late, so that was brilliant. Flipping bus. Right, let's get on to the racing. Overall, from watching the races, it looked pretty good. Actually, the first women's race was really good. I know there was a bit of discrepancy in terms of opinions regarding the track. I quite liked it, even on the Saturday. Yes, it was fast. It reminded me slightly of Argentina in terms of the grip wasn't always there. Some corners it looked more loamy, and then other areas it was choppy and they couldn't quite trust the grip. But even on the Saturday, while it was hard to pass, you could pass. You were able to go inside, outside. You maybe just had to do that 3 or 4 corners in a row to eventually make the move happen. But you had to think, you had to use throttle control. And again, the Sunday, the track was a bit different. I think they disked it up more. But still, I thought the track was pretty good. Yes, it wasn't easy to pass, but it was possible. And you had to think your whole way around that track. You couldn't just pin it too much because the ground was a bit uneven.
Absolutely. I mean, before I went, I watched that that amazing battle between Roxon and Herlings in 2011. And there wasn't a bump in sight. It was just flat pin it to win it. But Saturday morning they decided not to rip it, which they usually do, so I didn't mind that in a way because it was different, you know, for a change. It didn't have ruts and it was more open. The only thing I would say is because of that, it took a while to get rough. I mean, the first 8 sessions was just a speedway and everyone was enjoying the track, so you couldn't really take too much from the times because the times were all so close, but it got good for the races on Saturday. And then I didn't mind that they ripped it because then it was another challenge for the riders. The track was pretty different. It was more hard pack on the Saturday. Sunday was a bit more softer. They ripped it in places. And whilst I didn't think at the time that was a good decision, it actually turned out really well because the track was definitely a lot rougher on Sunday than it was on Saturday. There was no doubt about that. So overall, I think that the track crew done a really good job, and I really enjoyed the track because, like I say, I watched the Herlings and Roxon battle in 2011 and was expecting something similar, but actually the track was a lot more challenging this year than it was back then.
And the fact not all the track was ruts and not all of it was disked up allowed riders to be able to square off corners start outside, go inside, drift wide to try and make passes, which was good. It was something a wee bit different. Sometimes the track's either one line because it's tight, or it's one line because there's 3 or 4 ruts, but there's maybe only one good rut. So that was, again, something different. So overall, I know some people had mixed thoughts on the track, but I actually quite enjoyed it. Difficult to pass, yes. But as I said, it wasn't impossible. We saw riders come through the field, Jago Gertz and Tim Geiser. So it was possible. It just wasn't very easy, and it certainly was a fast pace. It seemed pretty intense right through the field in both classes.
Yeah, well, it was very, very fast on Saturday, but it slowed down a lot for Sunday, in my opinion. And I'm not sure who said they didn't like the track, but I was talking to a lot of riders, and pretty much all the riders liked the track, and they said it was rough. So yeah, I enjoyed it really good. And what I would say is, even though they did rip bits of the track, they didn't rip it too deep, so it was still possible to pass. And in the hour break between the first MXGP race and the second MX2 race, they ripped the start straight, and I was sort of thinking, what have they done here? But it was actually a good decision, because after about 3 laps, it was already as rough as it was, and then because it was so soft, it got rougher, and the braking bumps up the pit lane it didn't look like it on TV, I have to say, but they were pretty savage. The suspensions were working overtime, and Geiser and Gertz, where you could see them, lifting the front wheel over the bumps. So it was really good to watch. So no, like I say, I thoroughly enjoyed the track, because I was expecting it to be pretty much a speedway the whole weekend, and even after the first 8 sessions, you were sort of thinking, is this going to get that rough? But in the end, it was really, really good.
Right, let's talk about the racing. And Jorge Prado, MXGP class, came away with a win, his first win this year. And it was a wee bit like the first couple of rounds where he got the start and he got the win. But in the second moto, Tim Geiser showed he was still the fastest. However, what was interesting was Jorge Prado, after the race, actually mentioned he hasn't been at his very best this year, which I think we felt, but it was interesting to hear him confirm that from his own expectations and how he feels on the bike, but also the fact he felt pressure, that this was a weight off his back. For someone that's usually very calm and confident, I was a bit surprised he A, felt like that, and B, admitted that. Coming off Argentina, which was a relative disaster for somebody as fast as Jorge Prado and talented. Yes, he still got on the podium, but he lost quite a lot of points to Tim Geiser. To get this win, the win looked bigger. Maybe he only gained a couple of points in the championship, of course, but mentally this looks like a big weight off his shoulders. Jorge seems to think that this can now almost free his mind up and allow him to get to his potential. We know you were talking to him for an interview that you can catch on our site or listen to on the interview podcast from the Portugal Grand Prix. But he also mentioned he's still doing bits and pieces with the bike just to try and develop that as well. So things are trending in the right direction for Prado. We talked before this, and I felt it was a massive GP for him. He couldn't afford to lose too many more points to Tim Geiser, but he's arrested that momentum. He's got that big win. Yes, it wasn't a 1-1, but he still got a couple of points off Tim Geiser, got the win. And I feel in terms of momentum, this could be very big for Jorge Prado, just if someone stopped Tim Geiser winning. But Geiser was certainly the fastest rider over the weekend, you would say?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt about it. Geiser was the quickest rider, but the quickest rider doesn't always win. And I mean, after Argentina, I don't think too many people would have thought that Prado would have won this weekend or even gained points on Geiser. But that's exactly what Prado needed to do, to get back in this championship. There's no way he could have let Geiser gain points on him. So after Argentina, what looked impossible, he's done it. He's won the GP, he's gained points, and he's still quite far off his potential. And considering that only to be 19 points off isn't too bad. But again, he's going to have to stop Geiser from beating him and gaining points. But at least he's got it under 20 points now. So if he can even keep it under 20 for the next few rounds, like if they even get the same points or whatever, that's not too bad. Interestingly, Miguel Huub was speaking to him just before the press conference and asked him how he felt, and he said the last 5 laps felt very, very long. So I think at the end of motos he's maybe struggling, the end of the second moto, and if that race had been an extra lap, or an extra 2 laps, that whole podium could have been completely different, because Glenn was right on him. But so that's an area maybe he needs to improve. But going to Arco now, it should be a completely different challenge for the riders. They haven't really rode a slick hard pack track this year so far, so it'll definitely throw up another challenge.
And unfortunately for Prado and everyone else, that's Tim Geiger's best surface, with the absence of Roman Febvre, who, by the way, looks like he may miss most of, if not the entire season. He updated that he needs another operation on his leg, and he said he's going to be out for months, so it's not looking good for Roman Febvre. We'll come on to Jeffrey Herlings shortly, but again, he doesn't look like he's going to be back in the next round or two, maybe, at least. And that leaves Tim Geiger really with mental stability, I think, especially after Portugal. Yes, he didn't win, but he was able to close onto the lead duo in that first moto pretty quickly once he got into third, which I was really impressed with, because he could have just sat there and took it easy and took a third, but he didn't, and he rode hard, but he didn't look out of control. And again, in the second moto, he seemed to follow Jorge Prado's lines. As soon as he got a slight opening, he went for that pass halfway through, opened up a gap and controlled the race. It's almost like the intensity isn't quite there because Jeffrey Herlings isn't there, but Tim Geiger's the one controlling the pace of the whole championship at the minute. He doesn't have Herlings lifting that level, lifting that intensity. Maybe we from the outside would like to see that intensity maybe a bit more again like it was last year, but Tim Geiger's the one controlling everything. He looks like he's actually been trained all winter to go after Jeffrey Herlings at that intensity. And right now he almost doesn't have to, because Prado isn't quite at his usual level, although maybe this could be the turning point in Portugal. But other than that, Geiger looks like he's just got the pace on people when he really needs it. And yet again, the race he didn't win, he got a third and got second overall. His bad motos aren't bad at all, and he's not giving up very many points. And now we're coming to probably one of his best tracks. So again, although Prado won, guys are probably going to be still fairly calm going into round 5.
Yeah, well, the thing about Geiger with me is he didn't get an overly good start in the first moto, but he showed no signs of panic whatsoever. He just took his time, and actually he took his time to get into third. But, you know, whenever he decided to put the hammer down, it didn't take him long at all to catch Bogers and Prado. But interestingly, speaking to Gordon Crockard, who has a role with the Honda team, he says Geiger's being too conservative in the first motos,
right,
because he knows it's a long season and he doesn't want to take risk. And interestingly, Prado said the exact same thing to me. He said it's a long season and he doesn't want to take risks either. So it's interesting that they're both, you know, seeing the big picture this year.
Yeah.
Maybe that's because Jeffrey Herlings and Roman Febvre aren't there and they see themselves going for this championship. But it's interesting that they've both got that mindset, you know.
Jorge Prado is probably wishing Tim Geiger's bad motos would stop coming in qualifying heats that don't pay out any points. Ruben Fernandez, who ironically was brought in to help Tim Geiger at the end of last season, ended up hindering Tim in what I would say was a racing accident. I don't actually think it was Ruben's fault. The two riders, Geiger drifted a bit wide and Ruben was turning down, and they just collided. Yeah. And then Ruben collided actually with Mitch Evans again in that race. So it wasn't totally perfect for Honda that moto, but everyone turned it around for the Sunday. And again, it was Geiger. He had that issue in Argentina. He had another issue in the qualifying race in Portugal. And yes, you could argue that gate pick cost him a good start in the first moto, but yet he was able to make the good start in the second moto. So how much of an issue that was is hard to totally clarify. But certainly it opened the door for Prado in that first moto with that bad start, and Jorge, as he does, takes advantage, good under pressure. But certainly it's one of those things where what if for Jorge Prado? He's had a couple of bad motos and they've came in where the points paying motos, as it were, whereas Tim Geiger's couple of bad motos have come in the qualifying races, and therefore Geiger's been able to maintain that points gap pretty well.
Yeah, you're right. Although I think after Argentina and the way Prado rode, to gain points on him this weekend and get it down to 19, knowing that he's not at his full potential yet, I think Prado will be happy enough. Like I said earlier, I think he just needs to keep it under 20, 25 points. And then you never know if he starts to find his level from last year. You just never know. He could go on a bit of a winning run and then 19 points can get cut down very quickly. But for now, it's just the key for the next few rounds not to let that points gap get out any bigger. And, Tim Geiger isn't winning the first motos. So if he continues not to win the first motos, there's every chance that this points cap can, be maintained at roughly the 19, 20 points mark. But it's certainly going to be very interesting. Like you said earlier, Tim Geiger's pretty unbelievable, Argo, but Jorge Prado said in the press conference it's a track he likes and has good memories from as well. So it's one of those ones where the start could be crucial again.
And a rider who actually lost a lot of points is worst Grand Prix of the year, Maxime Renaux. He was up to second, looking like he could potentially be the guy to challenge Tim Geiger along with Jorge Prado. He almost had a Jorge Prado Argentina day in Portugal, except it was worse. He never looked quite totally comfortable with the track or his bike, or just it didn't look like the normal Maxime Renaux, even in the qualifying race. Even his lap times on the Saturday weren't quite there. They were sort of at the back end of all the elite guys. And actually the Sunday, he didn't ride too bad, but again, he was in the middle to the back of that sort of top 6, 7. Starts weren't amazing. That certainly didn't help. But a crash in each moto, the crash in the first moto probably was the worst one, because I think he was 6th, 5th or 6th at that point, trying to pass Paul Jonas. Looked like he'd got a bit of a rhythm. He crashed there. That dropped him back to 11th. Another crash in race 2 after a bad start, and 11th again. A lot of points lost from Maxime Renaux. And slightly disappointing just in terms of the championship, because he was really building momentum there. Of course, nothing's over this early stage in the season, but it does drop him back a wee bit out of that fight, which was kind of a three-way fight of people that were likely to really challenge for the championship. Now it looks like it's going back to Prado and Geiger, but Maxime Renaux is good in the hard. Well, he's good everywhere, obviously, but he's good in the hard pack, being French. And Arco could suit him, but the starts in Portugal would worry me a bit, that you can't really start even 5, 6, 7, 8, especially if Tim Geiger and Jorge Prado were going to go 1, 2, especially at Arco, which is notoriously hard to pass.
Yeah, I feel like Renault's riding on the Sunday wasn't actually the issue. The issue was the starts, like you alluded to, and also a crash in each moto. Like, we'll have to remember he's an MXGP rookie, and I think if he had got out of the gate, I don't think he would have got a podium, but there's no reason why he couldn't have been 4th or 5th. I don't think he was any slower than Codenhoff or Jonas. And obviously, if he had got the better start, he would have seen what the guys at the front were doing. And for an MXGP rookie, 4th or 5th overall is fine. The issue is the starts killed him, and you can't get a bad start in MXGP. He found that out, and as he was coming through the pack, a crash in each moto isn't ideal. So 11-11 on paper looks terrible, but actually his riding on the Sunday I don't think was that bad, to be honest. But yeah, it's just a shame for his championship. But we do have to remember he is an MXGP rookie, and coming into the season, he certainly wasn't expected to challenge for this championship. So just to put it down as a bad day in the office and come back out swinging an Arco.
It was just interesting, more the fact that he admitted he didn't feel totally comfortable, and this was probably the first round he hasn't felt comfortable. So maybe it's just an anomaly. Or as we go through the season, is there going to be certain tracks that he maybe doesn't have that feeling with that he did have in the first 3? Could be something to keep an eye on as well.
Yeah, perhaps. But for not feeling so good and having the potential still to be in the top 5 isn't too bad. It's just the results look very bad on paper. But, if he had got the starts or whatever and finished 4th or 5th overall, he'd probably been happy enough, because that for a bad day would have been quite good, especially for a rookie. But like I say, the crashes and the bad starts cost him. But hopefully he can cut the crash out and he'll be grand. I'm not worried at all.
It's probably the expectation as well. When you've just come off a moto win in Argentina, you're expected then to be at least challenging for that podium, if not race wins again. Brian Bogers, talking of people challenging for podiums and race wins, expectation was that Brian Bogers wouldn't probably be the guy to do that. Maybe a podium, at least for me, top 5. That would have been good for him this year. He started out really well. He had the dislocated shoulder in Argentina, and I'm not sure, especially after that, anyone expected him. A, I didn't expect him to be riding here initially, but B, to come out with that pace. He caught Jorge Prado in the first one, rode really, really well for second, backed it up in race 2 with a 4th, and 3rd overall for Brian Bogers, probably the best performance of his career.
Yeah, that's by far the best I've seen him ride. For me, he was a star. He was a star of the weekend and the real talking point. To be honest, unbelievable. I mean, that first moto, I think he was probably quicker than Prado. He just couldn't quite get close enough to find a spot to pass, and obviously Prado isn't the easiest guy to pass either. But yeah, the corner speed, he was carrying. He looked so comfortable on the bike. He could just put it wherever he wanted, and really impressed. And it's nice to see Bogers prove a lot of people wrong, because when he was at HRC Honda, a lot of people doubted him, thinking, oh, how's he got this right, this, that, and the other. But, he's a rider I've always rated. I think he is underrated. Just, he's had a lot of bad luck since moving up to 450, and it's nice to see him put it all together now. The one thing I would say is he showed glimpses of what he could do, but usually after 20 minutes, he would maybe drop back a bit. But that actually did not happen in Portugal. I was sort of waiting for it to happen, but it didn't happen in either moto. And actually, he was in the second moto, he pushed forward because he needed to pass PJ to get the podium, and he made it happen. So well done, Brian Bogers, and we'll see what he can do now. And this should really help his confidence. And I think he is a bit of a confidence rider.
Yeah, he was certainly very good. And underlined, I was a bit worried that injury would take the momentum away that he had in the first 3 rounds. In terms of the championship, actually, because he's been consistently so fast and somehow got better after injury, it's actually a bit of an annoyance that the Argentina situation happened, because he wouldn't have been far off, probably knocking on the door of that top 5 in the championship. Was going really well for him as well. Of course, there's only 1 round in a long season. It doesn't look like it's really interfered with his pace, obviously. So hopefully that was just a blip. There'll be no more injuries, because Bryant's enough of injuries, robbing his momentum and pace and everything like that, especially since he's come into MXGP. So it's fantastic to see him really show that potential, and probably surprise people, myself included, that he was on that pace. I mean, he legitimately caught Jorge Prado. Tim Geiger catching him at the end of the opening moto. That didn't seem to bother him either. So it shows you just how good he was feeling, that he was able to cope with that pressure. He's not usually up there to that extent, and he seemed to cope with it perfectly fine.
Yeah, exactly. Really good. A lot of riders that aren't used to running at the front might have crumbled whenever they've seen Geiger, but he actually upped his pace on the last lap, so that was impressive. And yeah, really good. And another rider at the standing construct team, I don't know what they do, but every single rider seems to improve underneath that awning. So big up to them, and hopefully Brian can keep going. Yeah, it is really a shame he missed Argentina, because he was 5th in the World Championship until then. And I mean, like, it'd probably be still at least 5th, maybe even 4th, knocking on the door. He's 8th now, which isn't too bad at all, considering he missed a whole round. So he'll be looking up instead of down, I think, as the season goes on. But it will be interesting to see how he does at a track like Arco, because the slick hard pack tracks are probably his weakness. If he can master them, he could really be the complete rider there.
Another rider who had a strong day, and good to see him approaching his best form again, was Glenn Coldenhoff. Actually a strong weekend. Fast in every practice session, won the qualifying heat on 4th overall, just missed out on the podium by a couple of points, actually. Glenn Coldenhoff has to be somewhat of a relief, not just with the one good result, but as I said, the consistent speed he showed all weekend. Good starts up at the front, no real mistakes. It looks like that arm pump issue is gone, hopefully, fingers crossed. And we might see, hopefully, more consistent performance of Glenn Coldenhoff out the sharp end of the pack. Certainly a big step forward for him at round 4 of the championship.
Absolutely. That's more like the old Glenn Coldenhoff we've got used to seeing over the last couple of years, for sure. And I don't necessarily think his pace has been the issue at the opening rounds. It's just, it seems like he's only, after 15 minutes or whatever, he dropped back. He seemed to have issues, but it was nice to see him not have those issues in Portugal and, maintain that speed for the whole race. So 4-3, very close to a podium, but he just missed out. But I think it's definitely a step in the right direction. And if he can keep riding like that, I don't think a podium will be too far away, as it wasn't in Portugal. I think he had it at one stage, but then Bogers passed Jonas, and then that got him the podium. So certainly he should be knocking on the door, and hopefully he can use that to build his confidence and progress.
Yeah, as you said, the pace had been there initially. but he didn't always have the longevity in the motos. Now it looks like that's hopefully being a hurdle that he's able to jump over. Pauls Jonas, he never seems to have a problem with pace. 5th overall in the mix all day again. Probably still slightly rusty in terms of race pace, just especially with the Saturday and Sunday racing back. Being injured at the start of the season doesn't really help your preparation for that. But 5th overall again, very good. And Jeremy Sear 6th. Those are the top 6 really that are kind of emerging as the main guys, with the exception of maybe Ruben Fernandez. We talked about him earlier. He was going for the lead in the qualifier. He looked sore after the second crash he had in the qualifier, but somehow started on the outside, dealt with the pain, and got 8th overall. Coming through the field, he was even very good in the first moto as well. Plus that second moto, I think by the end he was hurting a bit, but he still hung on. Definitely determined. 8th overall for him. And if he can get out of the gate and cut these, although as I say, I don't think the mistakes were necessarily his fault in Portugal, but definitely excited, I think, with the fans again. He's got a lot of raw speed, and to add to Ruben Fernandez, another rider that impressed me in terms of pace, Calvin Verlanderen, 7th overall on the Gebben van Venrooy Yamaha. This was the sort of speed he was showing last year. He's worked his way into it this year. I know he had an injury to deal with over the winter. He's now starting to come on really strong as well, which is great to see, because sometimes he can get a wee bit forgotten about. He was really good on the Honda and MX2. Probably should have had the opportunity to factory ride an MXGP, but he's showing the pace and the talent that he has. He's a good bike. He looks comfortable on it. And when he gets the starts, he can really sort of latch on to that top 6, and a flying Ruben Fernandez as well.
Yeah, just on Ruben Fernandez, he's had a lot go wrong, but fortunately for him, with the exception of crashing out in the lead in Argentina, the majority of it has went wrong in the qualifying races. So he always seems to maybe sort himself out for the Sunday. And he's actually 6th in the championship as a rookie, 6'9" in pain, like you mentioned. He definitely was in a bit of pain. So that's a really good day. 8th overall, can't complain about that. And I'm in agreement with you actually with the incident. I haven't seen it on the video yet, but I did see it in real time, and it did look to me like there was maybe a gap there, but maybe Geiser got caught up in the corner or something. But it just looked like a racing incident. There was certainly no intent there, and a bit unlucky that both ended up in a heap. Calvin Vlaanderen, I have to say, in that second moto, the last 10 minutes, he was really, really riding fast. He was catching the top 5 ahead of him, and I think he was running same lap times as maybe even Geiser at the end. Now, obviously, Geiser had a nice gap and was just cruising, but even still, for Vlaanderen to be catching and running quicker lap times than the guy behind Geiser should be a very, very big confidence booster for him. 8.6 for 7th overall. Sometimes Calvin maybe hasn't got the consistency. You maybe go 8.12 or something like that. So, but he should be aiming to get in the top 10 every single moto, and 8.6, you'll certainly be looking for more of that as the season continues, and with better starts, I think he can be in that Kohlenhoff Jonas group, and maybe even Sear group.
Yeah, just on the Geiser Fernandez crash, there's actually videos on it on GateDrop.com. If you have a look, there is a GoPro of both riders, and then the accident from a fan perspective with the camera looking at it, that road, and certainly it looked like a total racing incident, but Geiser definitely went wider in the corner while Ruben was cutting down, and then they just sort of connected. I think both rider maybe felt that it was the other one's issue, but with your Ruben, Geiser kind of just drifted out into where you were. Initially looked like Ruben had tried to cut down, lost his balance and fell into Tim, but it was maybe more Tim went wider in the corner than Ruben was expecting. Ruben was already there and then just fell into him. Certainly
whenever
not ideal.
Whenever I seen it in lifetime, that's exactly what I thought happened as well.
Mm-hmm.
But just complete racing accident, these things can happen, and it made the qualifying race a bit more interesting anyway.
Right, we'll get to Jeffrey Herlings in 1 minute, but just before we do, Alberto Ferrado, 9th overall. He's been sneaky good this year, getting decent starts at times, and if he doesn't, he's still got good pace coming through. Jeremy Van Horbeck, we're almost starting to expect this from Jeremy Van Horbeck on the beta. Just fast wherever he starts, and kind of in around that top 10 all the time.
Alberto Ferraro really impressed me because he had a bit of a disaster on the Saturday, and you were sort of thinking this isn't going to be his weekend. But whatever he told himself overnight, he came out firing on Sunday, 10-8, 2 motos in the top 10, and 9th overall, and he's 9th in the championship. Sneaky good, not a lot said about him, but 9th in the championship in MXGP. You can be definitely happy with the progress he's making this season. Van Hoorbeek, bit of a shame his bike cut out on him in the qualifying race, because then that gave him last gate pick. So under those circumstances and bad starts, 9 and 10 is probably about the best he could do. Another rider that really impressed me actually was Tom Koch. Not a lot could said about him, but 16-14 for 14th overall, battling with a lot of good riders. Really, really good.
Mitch Evans, also 12th overall. He said he never really got the start, but riding-wise, he felt quite good. So again, more progress, more laps, more points in the bank for Mitch Evans. Right, the big topic, you spoke to Dirk Grubel, Jeffrey Herlings. I think initially he was hoping to be back for last weekend in Portugal. Now it looks like this healing process is going slower than they anticipated. And the rumours of racing the AMS season now, it looks Dirk certainly didn't shut that down. Pretty much said that's on the table, which to me sounds like Jeffrey, that's what he wants to do. It sounded like Dirk would prefer him to stay in MXGP. Obviously, that's where he's used to having Jeffrey, and that's his responsibility running that team. And Jeffrey obviously has the number 1 plate. So from the MXGP side of KTM and that group, Jeffrey Herlings and MXGP is fantastic. But for me, I would actually like to see him if he's healthy, of course. You don't really want him going there half healthy with the Formula Tomax in. But if Herlings can get back on the bike relatively soon and feel like he's at a half decent level, at least coming into the first round of America, he'll probably never get another chance. This could be his only chance to do it. Hopefully he can still ride a few Grand Prix and maybe get that record as a winning record as well. But from a fan or something different, advice for me, I would love to see Jeffrey Herlings do the AMA Nationals. Caroli, I think you said, is going to do at least the first 4 is maybe the plan. Certainly some anyway. And for the AMS series, that's fantastic. But to have Jeffrey Herlings and Antonio Caroli not in MXGP this year, especially when there was that talk that Caroli was maybe going to replace Jeffrey Herlings at the start of the year, and you never know, he could have been one of the guys in contention for a world championship. He's ended up retiring. He's going to go to America and have some fun. Jeffrey Herlings looks like he may, if his foot is halfway decent, could be doing the full series. Nothing's confirmed, of course, but for the AMS series, very, very exciting, especially with the form of Tomac, and there's quite a lot of good 450 guys out there. And Jeffrey Herlings will have to deal with Dylan Ferrandis again, or maybe that should be the other way around.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. At this stage, it's all going to depend on when Jeffrey's back in this bike. But, you know, whenever I asked Dirk, is he going to be back in Latvia? It was wrote all over his face that he was very worried about when Jeffrey's going to get back on the bike. So I'm really not expecting him back anytime soon, to be honest. I think it's 6 weeks to the AMA National Opener. And I don't know. I think what the plan will be, if he can come back and ride Riola and do well there, that's a week before the AMA National. Mm-hmm. I think if he can ride that and do well, I think he'll be going race AMA. But if he goes there, if he goes there and sucks, or B, he doesn't make Riola, I don't think he'll probably start the AMA season. And, you know, this is only 5 weeks away to Riola, and he's not even back on the bike yet, and there's no real talk about when he's going to be getting back on the bike.
Dirk said he's just
I think it's going to be
cut. I think it's just starting rehab. So, I mean,
exactly.
Even the race is going to be tight. Good.
Yeah, exactly. And I think ideally, you know, he'll want to see what his speed is like before he goes to America. So it might all hinge on if he can race the Italian GP the week before. But it's definitely not looking great in that aspect. I think if the recovery was going well, definitely a lot more chance of it. But I mean, I suppose it'll be on him at the end of the day. But should he go if he's not fully prepared? I know it's a 12-round national championship, but if you start the season bad, the first 4 races go bad, the championship could be done before it's even started. So
4 races in 4 weeks. There's no chance to have
exactly.
couple of weeks off to rehab after 1 round just to get some points. If you're only coming back to your form, and within 6 weeks you've missed 4 or 5 rounds of your optimum speed, and you're probably not going to get the championship back at that point. And I don't think Jeffrey will go in there just for the experience. I think he would like to experience a season there, but he wants to win. He wants to contend for the title because whatever anybody says, he's the fastest MXGP rider in the world, motocross rider in the world, regardless. I don't think any of those guys are going to come to MXGP and race him for a season. So it's a bit unfortunate. It always has to be them going there. But I don't think Jeffrey's going to do that if he doesn't think he's at a level that he can compete to win. At least
absolutely. I hope that's the approach he does take, because I think it would be foolish if he went there with only a couple of weeks on the bike, and if he doesn't feel great. And not only that, this year he's got the other element of having to develop a new 450. Prado's had quite a lot of time on it, and he still hasn't got it to where the level was last year. Maybe if he went to America, maybe he could just say, "Can you give me a 2021 bike?" But that's for him and KTM to discuss. And they need to get this new bike up the scratch soon, so they probably want them riding it. So there's a lot of variables to it. It's going to be interesting, but I just hope that if he isn't right, that he takes a smart approach, just takes his time, and then come back to racing whenever he can be at least 80%. And then whether that's doing some MXGP and some AMA, that might be the better option. But like I said, it's all going to hinge down to when he's back on the bike. That's the $1 million question at the minute. And if he is back on the bike, say in 3 weeks' time, that gives him for 3 weeks before the AMA National Opener. Going by what Dirk said, I wouldn't be surprised if he does if he does compete the AMA National Championship, because Dirk has had the opportunity to shut it down, and he done the opposite of anything. Yeah,
because I remember asking Joel Smets at Hawkstone, and he didn't completely shut it down. You got the impression it wasn't something they wanted to do, but with the fact even he didn't rule it out, it sort of told you that this foot wasn't going to be ready for the start of the World Championship, and maybe as a plan B, it could be there. And now that plan B is looking more like possibly plan A at the minute, and that's still if the foot can maybe heal quicker than it has so far. That certainly isn't going probably as quickly as Jeffrey wanted it to go. And I feel for MXGP, it loses something when Jeffrey isn't there. There's an intensity, there's an expectation when he's on the gate that he can set the pace. And I think with Tim Geiser riding so well as well, it might have set up for some pretty epic battles this year. And we're not going to quite get to see it. And even when Jeffrey comes back, as you mentioned, how on form is he going to be? Is Tim Geiser going to want to go that pace whenever Jeffrey is at 100% later in the year if he comes back to that level? So it's not going to be quite the same as a fully fit Jeffrey Herlings and a Tim Geiser that looked all winter to be intent on revenge to get this title back, and the pace and the way he's riding this year, it could have been a fantastic championship. And I feel like we're just losing something, as well as Roman Fevre and obviously Antonio Carulli. But with Jeffrey Herlings, the defending world champion, not on the gate, even for Tim Geiser to see those battles with Jorge Prado and everything, a bit of what we saw last year, I think Geiser was really up for beating Herlings this year straight up. And Herlings looked like he was coming in on maybe a higher level than he was last year. I think it could have been some all-time speed. And unfortunately, we're just not getting to see that. Hopefully we'll get to see it at some point, but it could be the AMS side that benefits more. You never know.
Yeah, it could well be. Certainly it's looking like that at the moment, because even they're going to probably end up getting Crowley for some rounds. And even if Herlings does come back later, you would think he might be trying to do a couple of AMA races. So I think we'll probably see him race in America this year. We just don't know yet if it's going to be the full championship, but it will be interesting. To be honest, I wouldn't really mind if Herlings went over there, but the only issue is the AMA riders don't want to come and race here. It'd be great to see like Tomac and Dylan Francis have a go at MXGP, but never really happens, does it?
Yeah, it would be good if they did some, and it went vice versa, or they just raced the full World Championship in a year or two before they retire. If you like Tomac, that would be, if you do like Tomac, Jeffrey Herlings, Dim Geyser next year in the World Championship, that would certainly be something exciting. But we'll move to MX2, who Dylan Ferrandis came out of and won the championship. Tim Geyser, Jeffrey Herlings. This class is the class that produces champions in World Championship and AMA racing. And the champion in Portugal was Tom Vial, but a wee bit like MXGP, it was Jago Gertz in the second motor that showed that he's probably still the fastest 250 guy in the world. But Tom Vial did what he had to do in that first race. He's low-key ruthless for me, Tom Vial. He made another aggressive pass in Jago Gertz that first moto. I don't know if you've seen it yet. Right up, took the front wheel essentially away from him. Completely decisive, very determined. He did not want Jago Gertz to get away from him and lose that first moto. Vial wants this really badly. You don't think he likes getting beat at all by anyone, let alone Jago Gertz. He knows he's a points deficit to gain. On that first moto, it was a wee bit sketchy with the water. He got that advantage on Gertz, and then it was Gertz that made that mistake. Pretty uncharacteristic this year. And it was just quite freakish. Almost the front wheel just seemed to go from under, and he flipped over the bars quite hard. Luckily, he wasn't injured. It took him a while, I think, a couple of seconds to regain his composure. I don't think he knew what happened, first of all. Then he had to realize what happened and that he was all right. And then he got back on the bike and actually rode well to get back to ninth. But at that point, the damage was done. Tom Vial got the win, got a lot of points back. But Jago Gertz, I think, underlined how much of a different and improved rider he is this year by being able to win the second moto. Vial actually passed him again early, but Gertz didn't get into fluster. He didn't make mistakes that maybe would have unraveled him in terms of results last year and the year before. This year, mentally, he's very, very strong. He can make a mistake and he still makes the best of it. He can see Tom Vial passing him and he's not panicking. He's coming back with a decisive move as he did in that second moto, taking the race win, then putting down those hard laps to get the gap, taking that win, limiting the damage. And for me, he's still the man to beat. But Tom Vial isn't going away. He's very determined. We've seen the passes he's prepared to do in Jago already. It's only round 4. So Jago might at times need to get the wing mirrors out to see what Tom Vial is prepared to do. But certainly he looks to have the pace. But Tom Vial's got the determination, and this championship could get very, very interesting very quickly.
Yeah, what I would say is after Saturday, you were kind of scratching your head going, I'm slightly worried about Tom Vial here, but he seems to always have the answers on Sunday. Even if he doesn't win, to be right up there on at least the podium. And that's actually his second GP win now, 2 in a row. So slowly but surely he is getting there. I still think he's making probably more mistakes than Gertz this year. Got first motocross, but Gertz was the first one of the year really that he's made.
It's almost roles reversed a little bit from previous seasons.
Yeah, exactly. And you can have a random one-off crash. We can't really hold that against Jago unless he starts doing it, every week. Yeah. But that second moto, Jago Gertz is just a joy to watch. So fast. He was doing sort of things other riders weren't doing. Bumps here, bumps there. He was just lifting the front wheel over them. There was one corner he was jumping into it, and really, really good to watch. In my opinion, at the minute, he's definitely the fastest 250 rider in the world. And if he can maintain this, he is going to be hard to beat for this championship. But, Vial is going to get stronger as he gets this bike developed. He's lost a lot of time in the winter developing it, and he should only get better and better. And, he'll not be panicking yet. He's only 16 points behind the championship. After Gertz could only get back up to 9th, so he clawed back some vital points there. And, he was over 100 down last year, and he came back to 3rd, I think, in the end. So he knows there's a long way to go. But I really, really hope both can stay injury-free, because if they do, this could really go down to the wire, and it's going to be exciting. And like you say, Vial is determined, but I think Gertz underlined his determination this year in that second moto as well, to pass all those guys and to pull away. That was a bit of a statement to say, I'm the quickest rider this year.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing for Jago this year is his mind's cold. He's always been that determined, but sometimes the mind seemed to run away with him, and one mistake would create another mistake, or a bad start would create a rushed pass attempt. Almost like the way Tom Vial was in that qualifier in Portugal, trying to get getting frustrated, and then making a mistake. That was almost Jago the previous years. This year, as I said before, it looks like his mind's cold and he's able to deliver and execute on passes he wants to do there and then. He's not waiting as long, but he's not taking risks either. He's been decisive in his passes and he's making the most of it. And of course, he has the raw speed to be able to pull away at the minute from anyone. When he gets that gap, then he's able to control the race. So really, really impressive. At that level, there's not much Jago needed to improve. But that final piece was key, and it looks like whatever he's done over this winter, where there's frustration, he's just had enough at not being world champion, and he's just decided, I'm going to make these changes and deliver. He's got the experience now. Whatever he's done over the winter, it's certainly working at the minute. And it's actually really nice to see, because we've watched him for years, and the style and the technique and the speed's always been there. And now it looks like he's the full package.
Absolutely. And of course, injuries did play a part in the past as well. So it's nice to see that he's 100% now at the start of the season. And that can also help the mind. You know, it was almost like a domino effect last year. He came in injured, and then I think that injury was worse than he let on as well. And then everything just sort of went against him. And whenever you're not feeling 100%, these things can happen. But it's nice that he's 100% now. He's riding like we know he can. And yeah, Arco's going to be very, very interesting, because you would probably say it's more Tom Vial track. Yeah. Even though Gertz has no real weakness, you know, it's still what Vial, type of ground Vial would have grew up in France. So he's going to want to get the win there and claw back some more championship points. If Gertz can pull out a 1-1 there, it would probably hurt Vial.
Right, let's move on to the Brian Bogers of MX2. Mikael Harrop, second overall, second podium in a row, but this podium was probably even better than Argentina, just in terms of the fact he led laps. He actually re-caught Tom Vial in that first moto, and with about 2 laps to go, I was actually thinking he's going to put a move on Vial here. The last lap, he couldn't quite get close enough to do it, but the poise he had when he was leading, the poise he had when he was in second with that card of Tom Vial in front of him. We've seen Harrop be fast and make mistakes before. Last year, he was consistent. He wasn't getting the starts, really. Now he's got the consistency. He's got the speed. And for me, this was a real good test of where he is in terms of his maturity. And for me, he passed it, because he had the speed. He had all the temptation to ride too hard. He had to deal with the pressure. He had to deal with the opportunity to get the win. And he passed on every level. He never made a mistake when he was leading. He didn't get rattled when Vial passed him and loses confidence or loses rhythm. He actually learnt from Vial, picked his pace up again. When you spoke to him after, and he sounded calm as well. And even before the race, Lisa spoke to him and said he wanted to win, but he wanted to do it step by step. So his mentality this year seems really good. He's obviously gelling with that bike. And for Steve Dixon, this has been a fantastic signing, because Mikael Harrop's been a bit of a revelation this year.
So good, really, really good to watch. You know, he's waited a couple of years to get a podium. Now 2 in a row. He's up to 3rd in the championship standings, and he looks to be getting better and better. I think the one area he still needs to improve is probably because he had no pre-season race potentially. The first 5 or 10 minutes, he's still going fast, but he hasn't got, you know, he gets quicker as the race goes on. And I think that's why Vial probably passed him, because he hasn't quite got that intensity at the start of the moto that he has at the end of the moto. I think once he gets that sorted, he can win races, I think. I really do. I don't think he was any slower than Vial this weekend. And I think in the first moto, he might have even been quicker. It was just that intensity at the start of the race when he's probably not really used to it, because he hasn't been at the front of MX2 all that often in his career. It was interesting speaking to him after it, actually, because I asked him about the first photo he got 2 years ago at Matterdy Basin. After that, he went on a bit of a lull, but he said he's 2 years older now. He's more mature, and he just seems to be in a really happy place. He's actually, after 5 years living in Belgium, he's actually back living in Denmark now, which is quite interesting. Yeah. I'm not sure if that's actually been done before. Usually the Danish would come over to Europe and live somewhere. So
much travel.
As Steve Dixon says, he's making his own decisions, and Dixon has the belief in him to, you know, do his own work and do everything he needs to do in Denmark. And at the minute, it's working really well. As Dixon alluded to, nothing's went bad yet, so it'll be interesting if he has a bad race, how he can rebound from that. But at the moment, he looks really, really good, and I really do think he can win GPs this year if he keeps progressing.
Another Kawasaki rider's been really impressive, but he hasn't actually had the results until that last moto in Portugal. Kevin Horgmo, I think he was fastest in every timed session bar the literal timed practice session. I think he got third, but he had the pace all weekend long. And then he had that classic front wheel washout that he had in Argentina twice in that first moto. Ended his hopes there of a result that reflected his speed. But second moto, finally for Kevin Horgmo, he got the start a bit like Harrop in the first one. Showed a lot of composure in the lead. He's not used to that, and certainly in MX2. But he didn't make the mistakes this time. Even when Gertz and Vial passed him, he actually had Harrop right behind him. He stayed strong. He kept that pace going well. No mistakes. And hopefully that's now the hurdle that he's been able to jump over in terms of mistakes and to realise he can run up front. He doesn't need to force the issue early, and he has the pace. Whether it's the bike, whether it's the team, whether it's Mark DeRuva or just confidence and experience, Kevin Horgmo's really turned it up, maybe 2 levels this year. Really, really impressive. But it was really nice to see him finally get that result, lead laps, get third in that second moto, because the results haven't reflected how well he's been riding at times this year, and he finally got that. And a 5th overall, really good for Kevin Horgmo as well. The Scandinavians are really stepping it up this year.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching him on Saturday, and he was unbelievable. I've never really seen him ride like that before. He was just so fast, corner speed really good, and he looked so comfortable on the bike. He looked like he could just put it anywhere he wanted, and he was really, really good, and he backed that up in terms of speed on the Sunday. Obviously, I think he crashed twice and still finished 8th in the first moto, so that just shows you how quick he's going.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he hit the 3rd best lap time as well in the first moto. Yeah, I mean, he's still not used to running at the front. I think once he gets used to all this, he's going to be a force to be reckoned with if he can keep going in this direction. He seems very, very comfortable with that team, really happy. I was speaking to his mom, and she says he's really happy with the team, really happy with the bike. He told me the same. So, and the thing is, he knows where he's going wrong. He knows he needs to keep it in 2 wheels. So some riders, they lack the pace, and it's hard to get that pace if you don't have it. But it must be nice for him to know that he has the speed, and he just needs to keep it in 2 wheels. If he does that, a podium certainly won't be far away. Actually, he probably would have got the podium in that first moto if he hadn't been to twice instead of Gertz, to be honest, after Gertz finished 9th. So it's definitely he's knocking on the door for a podium, that's for sure. And it's nice to see him fulfill his potential.
Definitely. And also another rider who impressed, not the level in terms of raw speed, but in terms of grit and determination. 2 weeks ago, it looked pretty serious for Kyle Wolf as he lay in Argentina. Big crash, and he was pretty much motionless for a few seconds at least. Pretty worrying. And yet he came back, took a 4th overall. Very strong ride, both motos. And he even had that battle with Tom Vial in the qualifiers we mentioned earlier. Refused to give in, passed Vial back, and then he actually passed Harrop back pretty aggressively in the qualifier too. So really nice to see Kyle Wolf back. I don't think he was quite at 100% understandably, but it says a lot for his ability on a talent level, but also his ability on a mind level to grit that out and to come up with 4th overall. So really good for Kyle Wolf. Andrea Adamo, quietly effective again. Decent start, 6th overall for him. And we should also say Thibaut Benasson, first race, 7th overall. That was very strong as well.
Yeah, speaking to Rasmus Jorgensen, he said after Argentina, he didn't expect of a rider in Portugal. But they just, Kai was okay to race, no expectations. And mentally, after such a big crash, I think he was strung a little bit, but you wouldn't have thought it, 3-6, not riding, after what happened to him in Argentina, 4th overall, just missing a podium. They'll walk away from that like a win, to be honest, especially after Argentina, not even expecting to line up. So considering what happened, 4th overall is very, very good. Andrea Adamo, he keeps impressing me. He's very, very consistent. He's 5th in the MX2 World Championship. he's pretty much always battling for that top 5, and
he's
like you said for Horgmo going up 2 levels. I feel like Andre Adamo has done the exact same. He was usually between 10 to 15 last year, so to make that jump up to be battling for top 5s every moto, big jump. He's had a really good winter, and talk of the paddock is he could be a factory KTM rider next year. 18-year-old, somebody like him working under Joel Smets. As long as he can deal with if he can deal with the pressure, he can turn some heads, I think.
He's earned that opportunity anyway. And as you said, 18, for some reason, I keep thinking he's 20, 21. I don't know why, but 18 years old, he's had to prove himself, which is a good thing too, to show that riders who don't just jump in as a youth rider into factory teams and that's it. You know, the other teams are looking at riders just below that level, that if they show the potential, they can get the chance at those bikes as well. And Kevin Horgmo was also probably a good example of that. And Mikhail Harrop showing that with I don't know what you call that, semi-privateer. Still a very good bike with Steve Dixon, you know, that you can get results in MX2 as well. So it's nice to see that parity. Also getting a good result, but maybe a day that just encapsulated Conrad Muse's MX2 career. Good start in the first one. He almost got third. Kyle Wolf got him late on. Maybe a bit of a fitness just there, not so much raw fitness, but just in terms of being used to running that pace with the pressure and the intensity at the front. Conrad doesn't get to see the front because the starts aren't usually as good as that. So I was hoping that the second moto he would get the start again and you'd have a very good chance of a podium and certainly a top 5 overall. But it all went wrong. He didn't get the start. He couldn't pull through. And he ended up, I think, around 14th or so. Yep. 9th overall for Conrad. Still a good day, because I think if you come away with 4th, it's a good reminder that he has the pace. Everyone sees that pace in Britain, but going to the World Championship, it's not always there. He definitely needs the starts to show it. But at least when he did get to start that race, he showed it for the full 30 minutes, and he was battling with the best riders in the world. So definitely positive to take away from. But the frustration is that second moto, couldn't put 2 motos together again. And he really needs those starts, but at least when he gets the starts, he's starting to show the real Conrad Muse again.
Yeah, absolutely. First moto, really, really good, strong. Probably still not the Conrad Muse we're seeing in Britain, but he was still very fast and good. Second moto, a little confusing, because it seems to be that when he doesn't get a start, he struggles a little bit. He rode relatively okay, but I mean, Rubini came from dead last to pass him and finished 13th, so he didn't ride with the same flow for whatever reason. Not sure if it's a mental thing or what it is, but you know, I think he just needs a podium. He just needs it. I don't know if he's trying too hard whenever he gets into a good position or what it is, but I think if he can get the podium once, hopefully that'll be the monkey off his back, and then he can consistently run at the front. But like you say, he does depend on the starts at the moment, because when he does get a bad start, he can't seem to come through.
Mattia Guadagnini actually rode really well the last couple of weekends. It looks like he's turned the pace has come back for him, but he had that big crash in the first moto. And again, the second moto, I think he had to come through a bit, so we never quite saw him at the front. Quite unfortunate in a way, because I feel like a podium was on the cards, at least battling into that top 5 if he'd got away and no mistakes. He obviously did get away, but then he crashed hard in the first moto straight away. But riding wise, I think a positive for Guadagnini. The last 2 weekends have looked a lot better for him, more like the rider we saw last year.
Absolutely. In that first moto, it didn't take him long to eat dirt anyway.
No.
But
he's lucky he didn't get rode over.
Yeah, exactly. A bit unfortunate, really. 8th overall, but that definitely does not reflect the speed he had. Definitely, if he would have got away, he definitely had the pace for the top 5, as he showed in the second moto. But he just never really seen the front all weekend, in the both motos on the Sunday, which is a bit of a shame. But I think mentally that'll probably help him. He was in a bit of a difficult situation at the start of the season, so it's nice to see him ride like the level he showed last year. And Arco in front of his home fans this weekend, he'll be looking to get 2 good starts and run at the front.
And Simon Langenfelder, all these crashes seem to catch up with him at Portugal. I don't think he's 100% healthy. I think he hurt his thumb on the Saturday, if I remember correctly. So not the Simon Langenfelder we saw at the first couple of Grand Prix. Still 11th overall, still got some points. So hopefully he'll be feeling better this weekend coming into Arco, because I don't think that reflects where he really should be. For me, I think he is on that level of a podium contender and a race win contender every week. But we should also give Isaac Gifting a mention. Somehow, some way, 10 days after a broken collarbone, he was up running in the top 5, even had crashes and didn't get injured. The results in no way reflect how well he was riding as well. We seem to be saying that a lot today. But Gifting was running in that top 5, that second moto. Really impressive that he was able to ride at all. 12th overall, normally you'd be looking after a broken collarbone saying that was really good, but actually the results could have been so much better. He was quite unlucky. But it was good to see he didn't get injured with those crashes as well. But pace-wise, that was impressive.
Well, funny enough, speaking to Stephen Seward, he said he wasn't in any pain riding the bike, but he needed to keep it in 2 wheels, and he didn't do that.
Yeah.
So I'd say as soon as he hit the dirt, that probably it was probably a bit painful. He took one high-speed crash as well. I was a bit worried, but thankfully he was able to pick the bike up and finish in 11:11. And like you say, again, he wasn't far away. He was probably quicker than somebody like Benningstat, but Benningstat just went out and done his thing, was consistent, and I must say he had a very good day on his return, 7-8 for 7th overall, so that's something for him to build on. But Gifting, he always has a lot of speed. It's just keeping it in 2 ways. If he can do that, he'll not be far away from the front.
And Jeremy Sido, I know you were speaking to him, he had a good pace, but again, a wee bit the results weren't quite there. But he's been quite good in his ride on the Diga Procross KTM.
Really, really good. Actually, his speed definitely does not reflect the results he's getting. I think he crashed and hurt himself slightly in the second moto, but he should be good for Arco. And at the moment, that's going to be his last ride on that team. I would quite like to see that team keep him and run him alongside Everts. Whether logistically they'll be able to do that, but I feel like that might even help Everts too, because he's going to be under a bit of pressure to perform, and at the moment he's probably not going to be as fast as Sido, so having the both of them would be quite good, I feel. But it'll be interesting to see what to do, because I mean, Sido showed on the Saturday he has top 5 pace if he can get out of the gate. He didn't look out of place whatsoever.
Talking of Everts, we saw Stefan there. He just posted himself riding an enduro bike. And fantastic to see that again. The styles there, the standing up, the technique, wheeling over things. Absolutely brilliant to see Stefan back. You obviously don't lose that talent and that ability, even after everything he's went through. And I'm sure for Liam, it's great to be able to ride with his dad again. And I'm sure he's probably still learning stuff that Stefan does as well on the bike.
I would say so. That man knows everything there is to know about riding a bike and technique. So obviously great for Liam to have him in his corner. I think Liam will be back for Latvia. I think Latvia is the round after Arco, so the plan is for him to be back there. Whether or not that happens, it might end up coming too soon, but we'll have to wait and see. Just on MX2, shout out to Jan Pankar, rider that always seems to go under the radar, but he's a pretty consistent top 15 guy now. 16-12 and Portugal was good, and Petr Polak, the Czech Republic kid, 14th overall. 14-16, a step in the right direction for him and the JM Honda as well.
Right, just quickly wrap this up. AMX 250 and WMX, good racing as well. That first moto in WMX was really good with 4 of them going at it. But Lynn Volk, really impressive. She had the pace, both motos, and unfortunately Courtney Duncan fractured a collarbone and not actually time practice. The first practice session, tried to ride time practice and couldn't do it, and then they went to the medical unit and discovered she had that injury. That probably actually rules her out with not a lot of rounds of the World Championship this year. And Lynn Volk's in prime position to get it, but Nancy Van de Ven's never usually that far away either, so it could be quite exciting.
Yeah, it should be. Nancy also had a crash in free practice, so she was riding in a bit of pain as well. That's why I think she wasn't quite herself in the first moto, but she was definitely stronger in the second moto and kept Volk honest. It'll probably go down to the wire between those two, but I have to say it was nice for Volk to get her first one of her career. She's been knocking on the door for a while, and it's nice to see her fulfill her potential now. It's looking like a Yamaha is going to take that title anyway. Yeah,
there's a lot of Yamahas on the kit, but there's a couple of youngers coming through as well, which is nice to see. Stepping up to that
Martine
pace.
Hughes. Martine Hughes, future world champion in my opinion. She's very, very good for 17. very, very impressive, I have to say. Her starts were horrendous, but she's so smooth on the bike. She doesn't really panic, and she was a victim there in that second moto in what was a racing incident, but it certainly wasn't her fault. And a bit of a disaster. They couldn't untangle the bikes, so she lost valuable points. But
crash.
her riding is very, very impressive. It's been a long time, actually. Probably most impressive talent for me since Duncan, probably.
Yeah. And there's
probably
that her name's escaped me. The Dutch girl coming through, she's just off an 80. Is she Dutch?
Are you thinking about Lottie Van Runen?
Lottie, yeah, she's going to be really fast as well.
Yeah. Well, she's not. She's still too young to race that class. But yeah, she. Although it might take her a while to get right to the front, because let me tell you, them women they're going a good pace. But it will be interesting. Yeah,
it could be her and Hughes that are the future in 2 or 3 years of that class.
Yeah.
So Courtney, for a while, it looked like Courtney would maybe start to dominate that class. But I think now with the young ones coming up, Lynn Volk stepping up in the Van de Ven, it's not going to be that easy, for the next couple of years for Courtney as well. So it's actually really good racing. The depth, the front 5, 6, 7 are certainly very good at the minute in WMX. EMX 250 and Rick Elzinga is really impressing me at the minute. He looks more comfortable on the Yamaha for some reason. He looks calm, whether he's leading, whether he's coming through the field, whatever situation. And whether riding against those 250 Fantics, nothing seems to bother him at the minute. And obviously he's Dutch and better in the sand, but Portugal certainly wasn't a sand track. There was loamy areas, but there was also very slick, choppy areas. And Elzinga handled everything the track threw at him and ran away with the first moto. Showed good composure in the second moto to eventually break Tondale, and 1-1 for him. He's the man to beat now in this championship.
Absolutely, really impressive. It was the fact that he won 2 very different motos. The first one was very easy peasy and straightforward for him. Second moto, he had pressure behind from Tondale the whole race, really. I think back markers got in Tondale's way with about 3 to go, and then Elzinga just kept that gap at about the 3-second mark after that. So really, really impressive. And he's racing MX2 this weekend, but he's in a bit of an awkward spot now because the last thing he wants to do is push above his limit and crash and ruin the MX250 championship.
Well. So it's not exactly sandy.
So but we maybe can't be too harsh on him if he doesn't, get top 10 results or whatever, because he's probably going to have the MX250 championship on his mind, and I think that's fair enough.
Now, the most exciting part of the MX250 for me was the Coonan brothers. The Belgian Ricky Carmichael, Sasha Coonan won a couple of races at one round on an AMX 250, and he's already fast enough to be one of the top riders. Unfortunately, he isn't very good on the first lap. He gets very excited or hits the gate as he did on the first moto. So we're just working on that, but we can get around the first lap without crashing. But Lucas Coonan, he picked up the slack from his younger brother after the qualifying, and in the races it was Lucas that impressed. Second overall for him. We saw what he did last year in EMX 125 once he got confidence. These two are actually going faster earlier than I expected. By the end of the season, I was sort of expecting this. Sasha definitely didn't expect him to be running those lap times. We're working on the racing aspect. We just need to calm down slightly. But we're very, very, very fast. We're called the Belgian Ricky Carmichael. We just need to stay on. Lucas Coonan, really impressive. Certainly a bit calmer, but I think the first moto he got that triple wrong, and I thought he was down as well. So the Coonans know how to push it, but they're very, very fast.
Carry
on.
I feel sorry for Lucas. Anytime you bring them up, you always mention Sasha first. Poor Lucas.
Well, Lucas is really talented too.
Yeah, he was very, very good. He's a bit more smooth and more calculated than his brother. Yeah, and he's obviously not bothered by qualifying, because at qualifying he wasn't too great. But it doesn't really bother him. He's still got, I think, one good start, and then the other moto he fought through. But second overall, we've seen Hakan Osterhagen get a podium in his EMX 250 debut, and now we've seen Lucas Coonan on the podium at the second round. So it goes to show how quick they were going in the EMX 125 class last year, and it's really good to see two young Belgian talents coming through as well. Sasha, I mean, I never doubted that he'd have the speed for one lap, but it's keeping it in, it's getting the results and keeping it in 2 wheels.
On Saturday that you were quite nervous, and elevated heart rate watching him. It was a bit sketchy.
Yeah. I wouldn't be his mum or dad watching him anyway. The heart rate must be high, but I've a wonderful talent. I still think it might have been better to keep him on the 125, just to give him an extra year to learn. But yeah, hopefully he can last the season and just progress as the season goes on. But you'll be wanting to get some results soon.
You mentioned Osterhagen there. He was actually riding really well. And again, he's on a 250 at a very young age. That never really used to happen. You used to go 125 for a few years in your teens, unless you're Paul Mallon, you go straight to 500. But that's not normal. And Osterhagen's 15, 16 on a 252 stroke, running the pace. But then he got absolutely wiped out by Vedic big time. He was lucky he wasn't hurt. That was on the edge of beyond aggressive.
Yes, I've seen that live, and I was like, wow, that was nasty, to be fair. But I was speaking to Osterhagen, and he said at the start, he struggled with the bike, but he's getting used to it and keeps getting better. And obviously, by the start of the season, he'd already showed some really good speed, getting the podium. The speed of game wasn't really an issue this weekend. I think he had a bad start in the first one, and then the second one, due to the aggressive pass. But thankfully, he got checked out by the medic and nothing was broken. So we'll see him back in action soon, thankfully, because that could have been a lot worse. That was pretty high speed stuff, and he got the front wheel took away from him. So there's not a bit of wonder he put his hand up.
Yeah, not surprised that would have hurt, but pace-wise, definitely there again. So mentioned the Coonans, Osterhagen, there's a lot of young talent, as you mentioned, coming from that 125 class. Camden McClellan as well, actually, second in that first moto. So everyone's starting to get this pace in the 250 class. Yeah,
McClellan got took out in the second moto as well, actually. Okay. Otherwise, he would have been maybe knocking on the door for a podium as well, because he was very strong in the first moto. I do think Lucas Conan was maybe a little bit quicker, but, Camden has that determination, and he was able to keep him behind him to finish second in the first moto. So he has speed, and he's fifth in the championship after 2 rounds. So he's been consistent as well.
Right, that's a wrap on Portugal, and it's only a few days, and we'll have the Grand Prix in Arco and also Supercross in St. Louis. Although Eli Tomac will probably win that. I think we're just waiting for Christian Craig versus Jet Lawrence in the 250 class in the next couple of weeks. But Jason Anderson and Justin Barsha are about with Malcolm Stewart, so there could be a few fireworks there still, hopefully, because outside that top 6 to 8, there's not a lot going on in the 450 class at the minute. So we'll see what happens in St. Louis. Does Chad Reed ride a 250 Yamaha, or was it all a bit of a joke? We'll find out. But certainly a busy weekend again. And Andy, thanks for your opinions and experience of Agueda, and we'll speak to you next week.
Ciao for now.
You weren't in Italy, you were in Portugal.
But Italy's next.
But you aren't even going there.
I know, but I'm excited for Italy.
Right. Bye-bye.